This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.
Hello and welcome to this week's Liverpool.com podcast. I'm Matt Addison. Rich Garnett and Michael Plant are with me to talk through a Liverpool win and look ahead to another couple of big games for Arne Slot's side across the course of this week. Before we get stuck into it, don't forget to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan. You can go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. That link gives you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box below. Let's get started, though. Obviously, a big win, Michael, for Liverpool against a not particularly impressive West Ham United team, but a big win nonetheless. It did feel like there was a lot of pressure on Arne Slot and the players heading into that game. So as much as we've just discussed before we press record on this podcast, West Ham weren't up to much. You can't really ask too much more of Liverpool at this moment in time.
Yeah, West Ham weren't up to much, you're right. But I also don't think it should be overlooked that West Ham came into this game having were unbeaten in the 3 previous matches. They'd won 2 in a row prior to the draw last week. So Liverpool, I think, played a game that did limit West Ham's opportunities to attack, made it quite a tight, condensed game, and they were certainly much more structured and organised than has been the case in recent weeks. I thought the XG stats were quite interesting because West Ham's was the lowest that an opposition side has produced against Liverpool since that Burnley game in the middle of September. But in contrast, Liverpool's XG was, for instance, much lower than against Nottingham Forest, a game they obviously lost 3-0. So I think that probably tells you what the game is like. But you know, I'm actually quite pleased from a Liverpool perspective that they approached the game in that way, because I think too often matches this season have been almost like basketball matches, back and forth, and they clearly haven't worked for Liverpool for the majority of the campaign. So actually making it tight, making it a bit more condensed and being a bit more clinical with your scoring opportunities, I think was the right approach. And it slightly reminded me a little bit of last season in terms of some of the performances. So yeah, definitely a big step in the right direction from Liverpool.
Yeah, it was back to basics, I think, is the best way of summing it up, which is exactly what Liverpool needed, that little bit of a reset. I think Joe Gomez spoke a little bit about that to club media after the game and kind of said, you know, it was slightly more solid and slightly more defensive, but when you've got those attacking players, which I'm sure we'll come on to in just a couple of moments' time, you know, that's the best way forward, isn't it, Rich? This feels like maybe not a template for the long term for what Arne Slot wants, but certainly in the short term, he needed to get a result, and that setup did ultimately give him that.
Yeah, that's exactly what Liverpool needed, wasn't it? They just needed a solid defensive performance to build into a good result, which is exactly what they got. It wasn't the most exciting game I've ever watched, to be honest. The first half was particularly drab, but the important thing is that Liverpool didn't concede any goals in that 45 minutes. So they've been giving themselves mountains to climb with conceding so many early goals, you know, catastrophic leaking of goals left, right and centre, particularly early in games, has done Liverpool no favours whatsoever. We know they've had trouble fighting against adversity in recent weeks, but this might have been a bit more of I wouldn't say a backs to the wall approach, but certainly a more conservative way in which they protected the back line. And I don't recall West Ham being particularly dangerous at any point. They had that one chance for Jarrod Bowen late on, didn't they? Which he flashed wide. I did feel the worst at that point, I must admit. But other than that, they weren't really troubled. But it is exactly what I wanted, really. Just a solid defensive performance with a clean sheet and 3 points to boot as well. And of course, a goal for Alexander Isak, which is very welcome.
Yeah, big, obviously, for Isak. We'll come on to him and Wirtz in a second. But, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, Michael, that we're talking about Liverpool looking a lot better, looking reset. This is exactly what we wanted to see. But the one player that we didn't see even come off the bench was Mohamed Salah. I think that is a big talking point, isn't it? It's a bit of a dilemma, I would say, for Arne Slot heading into this week, because he's a star man. I suspect he will start at least one, if not both of the matches this week. But it is a genuine discussion point, isn't it? After not just what we've seen this weekend, but what we've seen leading into that as well.
Oh, it's a massive talking point. And this time a year ago, actually, almost, to the month, Mohamed Salah went to West Ham, produced that incredible performance where he did that unbelievable assist. I think he scored and provided 2 assists and probably was the best player in the world at that point. Fast forward, it was 11 months by the time we got to Sunday's game. And now there's a genuine question about whether he should even be in the Liverpool starting 11. And I think, Slot obviously tried to play it down as you would and implied that it was rotation, didn't explicitly say that, but that was the strong implication. But, there's other players who played as many games as Salah and they weren't rested or rotated. He wasn't rested and rotated last season, of course. This is the first Premier League game under Arne Slot that Salah hasn't played in. So it is very significant. And I had a little look back. The last time Salah was an unused substitute in the Premier League was June 2020. It was actually the first match back after COVID. So it's a really, really long time. It's a good, I like that sound effect, Rich, that underlined the significance of my point. But it's really... Do fine. It's a really interesting decision by Slot. I think the correct decision. I said that before the match. I think it was justified by the way the game panned out anyway. But it is a huge talking point, and as you rightly said, I think it's going to run into certainly the press conference against Sunderland, and perhaps even in the build up to that Leeds game.
Yeah, we saw Dominic Szoboszlai play off the right. It's a position that he's played before. Obviously, Florian Wirtz played well. It helps, I think, that Alexander Isak scored. Maybe the narrative around Salah might be a little bit different if that goal didn't come and the breakthrough didn't happen. But what do you reckon Arne Slot should do, Rich? Is this the formula now moving forwards, and would you keep him on the bench for Sunderland, or would you look to bring him back in and go back to hopefully, not just a better Salah, but if the rest of the Liverpool team can improve, maybe you put him in and expect that he can improve as well off the back of that. Which way would you go? Which way do you expect Arne Slot to go this week?
Well, I think the formula is to stick with a winning team. So that really, whether Mohamed Salah's in that or not, doesn't really concern me, if I'm honest with you. You're absolutely right that it is a big talking point, especially if he's not actually, failed to come off the bench since 2020, did you say? So, that is, I've quickly worked that out. That's half a decade. So, that's pretty significant. And there's going to be noise around it. And what will be interesting to see if any of that noise actually comes from Salah or his camp. I suspect not at the moment, because I think he's fully aware of the situation. Liverpool have been on a dire run of results, which they needed to quickly avert. They've made changes to try and offer better balance to the side. Whether the side was more balanced or not is a matter of opinion. But the bottom line is they've played well in a shape, and other players have been able to get on the ball a bit more, and they've come away with a result. Now, I do expect them to be involved against Sunderland and maybe against Leeds, but again, this might, whether he starts those games or not, I'm not really certain. That Arne Slot may say, well, I'm quite happy with what I saw at West Ham. It gave me, for the first time all season, it gave me, apart from in the Champions League, it gave me a comfortable victory. Does he want to change that, or is he looking at the fact that he's got a lot of games in a short space of time and he needs to make changes? Because if Salah did come back into the starting lineup against Sunderland, we'll have to move Szoboszlai from where he is really and come up with something else then, and you're disrupting things again. So I don't think it's as straightforward as just putting him back in. You've given him a game out, but I've got a sneaky feeling he won't start. I think he'll stick with something similar to what we saw on Sunday, and I think he'll probably come off the bench. But that's just my sneaky feeling. And if it prompts a reaction out of Salah, then we're all the better for it. And I've got a feeling that it will.
I agree. By the way, with just everything you've said, well summed up.
Yeah, the only counter argument I think is maybe if Joe Gomez obviously plays 90 minutes of the weekend, maybe if he can't, for whatever reason, start in the midweek, maybe you move Szoboszlai back to right back and bring Salah in. But
no, don't do that.
I'm not saying I want to see that. I'm just saying Joe Gomez has not played 90 minutes in the space of 5 days, twice back to back for a very, very long time. I suspect it's probably not quite as long as Salah being stuck on the bench, but something along those lines I think would be the only route really that I can see with it. But
I'm pretty sure last week when Arne Slot was quizzed on why he hadn't brought Gomez back into the fold, he pretty much suggested that Canate and Gomez couldn't play at the same time because of fitness issues. or fitness concerns. If one of them was injured, they wouldn't have no one to cover it. But that appears to have gone out the window at the weekend. So anything's possible. But I don't think he was particularly tested, Gomez, was he? So as long as he had a good bath, hopefully he's all right for Wednesday.
I don't think Gomez. I don't think he'll play. I don't think he'll start on Wednesday. I agree on that. I just don't think he's capable, is he? And Slot is generally quite cautious with players in terms of fitness. I mean, Conor Bradley's one I think he's been very, very wary of throwing, and rightly so. I've been wary of throwing him in. I don't think Gomez will be available to start against Sunderland.
And I think if you had to pick one of Sunderland at home or Leeds away to have Joe Gomez in, regardless of Sunderland being in the middle, I think if it was just a straight decision of do you start him, against a team at home or a team away, I think I'd probably pick Leeds in terms of doing that as well. But I mean, just in terms of Salah generally, Michael, Rich has sort of hinted at it there. The point I was going to come to next is that I'm sure he won't have enjoyed sitting on the bench and watching. That's something we know from his character. It reminded me actually a couple of years ago when Liverpool played West Ham that he had a little argument with Jurgen Klopp when he was coming on. That was obviously at the London Stadium as well. It all seems to happen when Liverpool play there. But I do wonder if this might just light something in him to sort of prove a bit of a point. And again, we've said that a couple of times this season already, and it's not really happened. But there is a bit of me that wonders if he does come back into the team against Sunderland, whether he has to wait a little bit longer. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of extra determination on his part to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that he's been criticised quite a lot recently in the media, mainly by former players. I mean, Carragher has taken a real pop at him in the last couple of days and basically said he's not stepping up and speaking to the media when they lose. And he is right. He only does speak to the media when Liverpool win, Salah. And I mean, I know some of these players aren't the most reliable. Like Didi Hamann has criticised him, Alan Shearer's criticised him, Wayne Rooney's criticised him. It's quite a few people now. So you do wonder whether there's going to be a reaction to that, and then of course being dropped. But yeah, listen, I mean, he's not played well enough, Salah, this season. Full stop. I mean, how many games he actually played well in? 2, maybe, I would say. Atletico, he was very good. Villa, he was very good. I don't think he was that good against Real Madrid, personally. So I think it was completely the right decision to drop him. I actually think it was weeks coming, to be honest. I think he should have done it, before the international break, really. And the result of it was that Liverpool were more structured, were more difficult to break down. I think that Szoboszlai at right wing, okay, he didn't offer a huge amount attacking wise. Did look like a little bit of a square peg in a round hole out there, I thought, but Liverpool were more difficult to play against and were less open. So it was a completely justifiable decision. And then it also brought the best of Florian Wirtz on the other side. And you do wonder, I think, going forward, whether there is a way of getting Salah and Wirtz in the team and playing at their best at the same time, because the other performance, it sounds like to me, for Wirtz was against Frankfurt again when Salah was dropped. So it's interesting. It's a recurring theme and one I do think that we're going to be analysing more and more as we go forward.
Yeah, it felt like a little bit of a look into the future, really, of what Liverpool might look like without Salah. Obviously, Isak and Wirtz still working on that relationship and that partnership as a two, but obviously both heavily involved in that game. Wirtz in particular in the first half I thought was excellent. Rich, is that the big key question as well when it comes to Salah, of not just does he deserve his place in the team, but can you get a way of maybe having him and Wirtz together in that Liverpool team? What do you reckon the sort of future is for that for the next few months? Because I'm sure at some point, whether it's this week or beyond, we're probably going to see it again at some point, I would imagine.
Well, first off, I feel like the Slot leaving Salah out was basically perhaps a little bit forced. It's obviously something that he's not been very keen to do, even though his performances have perhaps not justified starting every game. But Arne Slot's job's on the line. So that creates a completely different dynamic, doesn't it? And he's had to make a big call now, which initially has worked for him. And it has also got Wirtz into the side and, in the middle there, which is where we want to see him. They spent, 160 million pounds on him in the summer. So it probably makes sense to play him and play him in the position that you signed him for. You know what I mean? This is Liverpool's future. Alexander Isak, the same. He's had other issues. I've said previously, the fact that he didn't have a pre-season was his own fault. And Liverpool knew that when they signed him. But now he's in and around and regaining that fitness. He probably has to play. I would have actually liked to have seen Ekitike on the left Sunday rather. But that's another conversation. Your question was about Salah, and do I think he can come in? I don't see why not. Why not? Why? Is it? For everything that's said about Salah, he's still a team player. The man has like a record number of assists for a forward, and contributes in that way as much as he contributes with goals. I don't see any reason why he can't, or he should certainly be open to it. But what I do think we need to stop doing is trying to shoehorn Florian Wirtz into areas of the pitch where we know aren't his strengths. You can make him play different roles, but he was signed to play, in that sort of advanced midfield role, and we need to see him there all the time.
I do think Salah should start against Sunderland for multiple reasons, but one big one is, what sort of message does it send out to the rest of the players that, well, you've had one good game, and listen, I've just gone back to the guy that I've relied on, but it's been useless for the last couple of months. I think he's got to stick. And Richie did say it earlier, but I do think he's got to stick with that winning team from the weekend, more or less.
That means Gomez is still in, Mike.
Well, I know that's why I said more or less.
Nice little caveat at the end there, I like that.
Isak as well going again, which I suppose wouldn't be the worst thing, but we've got to touch on him as well. Obviously, he scores his first Premier League goal for Liverpool. Took it really well. I actually thought he was pretty awful for the first few minutes. Slowly got better. To be fair to him, took the goal really, really well. But I mean, what did you make of his overall performance, Michael? Because I think the goal maybe masks over a few other issues, but hey, if he scores every week, it doesn't really matter what the rest of the touches look like.
Yeah, I agree entirely with what you've just said. It doesn't matter if you don't play brilliantly. If you get the goal, and it was the crucial goal in the game because it set Liverpool up for victory, and that's what he was signed to do, really. And you're right, it was actually a lovely finish. If you actually watch this or slow down, he just holds his position and he only just takes a little glance at the goal and just lovely little side foot finish into the bottom corner. And there wasn't a huge amount of space to aim for either. So, yeah, listen, it'll do his confidence the world of good. I think the big thing for Isak, as well as getting that goal, is he just needs to be playing regular games. He needs to get those fitness levels up. He just doesn't look sharp to me still at the moment, and I didn't think he was good against West Ham. I mean, I'm sure, without naming names, I'm sure one of our editors won't mind us saying that he wrote a critical piece of Isak just before the goal went in, and then was writing in our group chat laughing, saying, "Oh, I've just criticised him and now he scored." So yeah, I think that sums it up really. We're still here, yeah. And so, yeah, I think that sums it up, really. The most important thing was that he got the goal, but as I say, his performance wasn't amazing.
Hello?
We can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
He's back on his happy days.
Yes, I hope this isn't my fault.
I think it may well be your internet's fault, maybe not your fault. So we'll see if we can crack on anyway. In terms of Isak, you mentioned, obviously, Hugo Ekitike as well before Rich. To be fair to Cody Gakpo, scores and assists. It'd be pretty harsh to take him out of the team as well, I think, in the next couple of games. But how do you see it all fitting together this week? Obviously, we want to see more from Alexander Isak. The only way of seeing more is to keep him in that team. Is that what you do? How would you fit Ekitike in there as well?
Well, on the contrary, I haven't really got a problem with taking Gakpo out, to be honest with you. I think he's a little bit predictable. And, a very reliable player for Liverpool and for Arne Slot, but doesn't mean he has to start every game. And as I alluded to earlier, I would like to see Ekitike given a bit of a run on that flank, given that that's the only way you can get him and Alexander Isak on the pitch at the same time if you're playing said formation. So, and with Wirtz in behind as well. So, personally, I'd like to see him given a chance on the left. And obviously, Gakpo scored against West Ham, but I don't think he did too much more beyond that, to be honest. I've had a little bit of an issue with Gakpo, and obviously we know that he cuts in a lot, and that's fine. He's going to cut in on his stronger foot and shoot. But I think he's neglecting Kerkez as a result of that. And Kerkez was signed as a player who can put great deliveries in from the left-hand side, and I don't think we've seen anywhere near enough of that. But a lot of the time, I think he has been ignored by Gakpo. So I'm not Kerkez's biggest fan, by the way, but I know I know what his strengths are. I know why Liverpool signed him. And if he's going to be given an opportunity to show how he can benefit Liverpool, he needs to get a little bit more of the ball higher up the pitch so we can get those balls in. And if you've got people like Isak in the middle who can get on the end of it, then that could be a very potent weapon for Liverpool. So it wouldn't really bother me whether Gakpo started the next game or not, to be honest. I'm a big Hugo Ekitike fan, so I'm all for getting him in there.
Can I just jump in quickly on that? I agree entirely with what you said about the connection between Gakpo and Kerkez. I think you're spot on there. But I think I'm really surprised at some of the criticism, and it's not just you, Rich. I've heard it from multiple places over the last couple of weeks and months. But I'm surprised how much criticism Gakpo gets. I actually think he's been one of Liverpool's probably best performers this season. I think he consistently provides a threat. Yeah, he is predictable, and do know what you mean, but he consistently offers something. I mean, obviously, it was him that essentially set up the goal against PSV in midweek. I'm struggling to think of other games off the top of my head, but I think he has actually been one of Liverpool's better performers over the last couple of months, and I actually think that he's a player that does need to be in the team, despite what you said on Ekitike. I think you're right on that one. But yeah, I'm surprised at some of the criticism he gets at times.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-Gakpo or anything like that. But Liverpool created their own problem by making lots of signings that didn't necessarily fit into a starting 11. And Hugo Ekitike has been, out of the new signings, has probably been the best one. So it's quite difficult to leave him out. But at the same time, if you want to bet Alexander Isak in, he will miss out unless you play him somewhere else. So I don't think it's not necessarily a case of Gakpo not being up to it. If we didn't have Ekitike there, I wouldn't have a problem with starting him. I just think I'd like to see what I consider to be some more exciting players on the pitch ahead of him first. And if that's not working, I think he's a good plan B. Let's not forget, most of the time he was a plan B to Luis Diaz, wasn't he? I think Diaz started more games than Gakpo. I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong there, but Diaz is no longer there, and that's given Gakpo more of a run on that left-hand side. But I don't think it should be exclusively his.
No, I think that's fair, isn't it? I do think he's a player that is quite reliable in the penalty area. I think if a shot comes in from him, it tends to be on target, tends to be pretty high quality in those areas, and that isn't necessarily always the case with players in that position. I do think he is quite reliable. But you mentioned as well there that the relationship with Milos Kerkez, I suppose we should give him a mention as well. I think that was probably his best performance in a Liverpool shirt, probably by some distance, to be fair. Not necessarily in terms of what we expected to see from him flying forward and putting balls into the box, but defensively up against Jarrod Bowen, Michael did a really good job, I thought, defensively, just putting his body in the way, being in the right position, being fully concentrated. I mean, when you spend £40 million on a left back, you do expect that, but we haven't necessarily seen that so far this season.
No, you're right. And I think actually it was his defensive performance that stood out for me rather than actually what he offered going forward, which, as you said, Rich, is probably what he was actually signed to do. Yeah, he was really good. I think you're right. Probably was his best performance for Liverpool since he joined. And I think as well, we do forget sometimes that he's 21, and that is still so young for a fullback in the Premier League. And you mentioned concentration there, Matt, that you would hope that's something that will come with a few extra years of experience. But yeah, a positive sign, and it looks like he's going to be fit as well. He actually, I wonder whether he is one could be rotated in midweek, actually, because he started all three since we came back after the international break. You could see Robertson maybe coming in for one against Sunderland and then coming back out against Leeds. So yeah, we'll see in that one.
Yeah, that's an obvious change, isn't it? The two fullbacks, I think, are two big decisions to make. Obviously, Salah is another one. But apart from that, Rich, do you reckon it'll be a pretty similar team against Sunderland midweek as what we saw, just on the basis of it works, so stick with it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Kerkez has had this little run of games now, and I guess I probably would have brought Robertson back in for that, but that's not the way they've gone. And to a certain degree, Kerkez has repaid the faith instilled in by the manager, because he's now had a run of games where I think he's done a lot better than he had previously. You know what I mean? I'd not been impressed with him at all up until a few weeks ago. Pretty concerned as to what Liverpool had spent the money on, to be honest with you. But he has seemed to have settled down a bit now, and obviously a run of games will do any player a bit of good, and he's managed to get that ahead of the Scotland captain, so good on him. And on that basis, I don't see, as long as he's fit and the manager's happy with him, I don't see a reason to replace them unless there's some sort of very geeky minutes limit analysis that goes on that's going to prevent him from playing X amount of games in a short space of time or whatever. But as Michael said, he's like, what is he, 21, 22, something like that. He should be fighting fit. So if he's fine, I would just keep him in. And the more to the reason of that is just to stop having to tinker with the back line. We've spoken previously about, Liverpool's back four never finishing matches the way it started, and the constant tinkering he's had to make a right back. And obviously he's had to do it again at the weekend, but that was one that had perhaps been maybe a bit more anticipated. Albeit, Gomez could have come in for Canate as a centre back. That's not happened. But he's still managed to get into the team. So unless there's any issues, I would like him to keep the same back four against Sunderland.
Yeah, solidity and sort of stability is the best way forwards. Just to finish as well, Michael, I wanted to touch on the two in midfield. We've touched on pretty much every other player in the Liverpool team from the weekend. But McAllister and Gravenberch, again, solidity, I think, is the word, really. They weren't in any way solid against PSV. It was very, very easy to play through them. But again, that's another couple of players, really, that you look at and think if they can not even do anything spectacular, but just be 6, 7 out of 10 every week, that'll go a long way as well. You'd expect maybe Curtis Jones to come in for one of the next 2 games, but if those two in that double pivot in midfield can step up, that would, I think, go a long way to helping Liverpool as well. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I do think there will be a few changes in midweek. I mean, I know I said stick with a winning team, but probably with rotation, there'll probably be a couple of little alterations here and there. I thought the midfield was just okay. Which, I mean, as you say, is an improvement. McAllister, I don't know, he still just doesn't look quite at it for me. His passing range, he looks like he's almost lost a little bit physically as well, which was, for his size, was actually one of his real strengths, I thought, last season as well. But yeah, there's definitely still room for improvement there. But I think Sunderland's going to be a difficult game, and I haven't seen a huge amount of them this season. They don't really seem to be on TV all that much, but they are obviously going to be really difficult to face, and particularly Granit Xhaka in centre midfield, who I think is a great player. I was really surprised when Arsenal sold him a few years ago, and probably justified that, haven't they? But he's going to be a real kind of warrior in centre midfield. You're going to need battlers and scrappers up against a player like him, and yeah, I don't know whether it's a game for McAllister personally, but other than that, I think I would kind of stick with the team more or less.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle and a scrap. I think against Sunderland, there's going to be plenty of long throws as well. So we will see if this Liverpool renaissance is sustainable in matches that maybe don't suit them quite as much. West Ham didn't really lay too much of a glove on them, but I suspect that Sunderland and Leeds this week definitely will try and do that, particularly Leeds at Ellen Road under the lights. I think that will be a particularly big game for a few of those players. You won't have seen the quotes yet, but by the time people are listening to this podcast, Alexis McAllister has spoken about his sort of fitness and sort of pushed back a little bit in terms of the maybe not quite injury, but him maybe being told by a few other people on the outside that he's not 100% fit and ready, which he's kind of pushed back on and said, actually, I feel a little bit better than what some people are talking about, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, I think there's definitely improvements to be made on that front in the next few weeks. And if he says he's 100% fit and ready, then hopefully we'll start to see a little bit better performances over the next few weeks. But we will leave it there for this week. Thank you to Michael for joining me, and for you as well, Rich, for jumping on. We'll be back next week with the next Liverpool.com podcast right here on the Blood Red channel.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.